Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tanim Graun Q&A. It's a series funded by Australian Aid. My name is Alan Bird. I'll be your host for today. This afternoon, I'm happy to say that we have a local company, Masalai Communications. They're an independent company. They'll be facilitating this Q&A for us. And as we go on with this program, they will be tweeting live on YouTube and other media. So thank you, Masalai Communications, for coming on board. Before we start, I'd like to explain why we've chosen to name this event the Tanim Graun Q&A. Now, Tanim Graun is a Papua New Guinean phrase that is not really in the common language, but it's used by young people. And generally, it's used as a challenge. And they will say to one another, in Pidgin, they will say, "You by Tanim Graun." It's like a question, are you going to change things? And that's why we've chosen to call this the Tanim Graun Q&A. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Our topic for discussion today is consumer protection. To help us with this subject, I want you to please welcome our panelists. I have on my extreme right, David Peat. David is the GM for Paradise Foods, Papua New Guinea's oldest manufacturing company, and Papua New Guinea's 100% PNG-owned manufacturing company. If you're a member of NES Fund, you own this company. And today he'll be representing the Papua New Guinea Manufacturers Council on this panel. Right beside me is Mr. Ray Paul. Ray Paul is the Commissioner for Customs of Papua New Guinea. Thank you, Ray, for coming on board. Beside me, and I have to do this properly, Ken's got a hard name. This is Ken Nea Kawapa. Did I get that right? He represents the National Department of Health. So please welcome Ken in joining us. Beside him, we have Professor Billy Manoka. Professor is Commissioner for the ICCC, which is the Independent Consumer, what is it, Billy? Competition Commission. Thank you, Billy. Next to him, we have Victor Gabi. Victor is Acting Director for NISIT. NISIT is the National Institute of Standards and Industrial Technology. I got that right. Thank you very much. Now, consumer protection. From fake goods and shoddy products to dangerous toys, what can be done to stop Papua New Guinea from becoming the world's dumping ground? Professor Manoka, can I ask you to go?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank EPSP for recognizing the importance of protecting our consumers, most of whom are not well educated, to really protect themselves from shoddy deals, shoddy products, and shoddy traders. The Independent Consumer and Competition Commission is one of its core responsibilities is consumer protection. It is one of our core responsibilities to ensure that consumers' interests and welfare are protected. But at the same time, consumers are also, we encourage them to be also more responsible. Having said that, one of the things that we endeavor to do is try to do our best to educate consumers on their rights and traders on their responsibilities. And on that front, we have a draft compliance program, which I will talk about later. And we're in the process of strengthening the consumer protection aspects of our law.
Okay, Billy, I bring you back to the question. What do you think can be done to stop Papua New Guinea from becoming a dumping ground for fake goods and shoddy products?
It is my view that the Commission is not the only agency responsible to ensure that whatever products that come in are genuine. And on that front, we have the Commissioner for Customs here. We have NICIT here, who are responsible for standards. And of course, us, whose main role is to ensure that consumers' interests are protected. So to me, it's a team effort. And during the course of this Q&A, there will be certain things that I will highlight which are frustrating the work of the Commission. And for me, ICCC alone cannot, we can implement what the Act allows us to do, but there are certain consumer protection aspects that are in other legislations, which I will highlight during the Q&A. So on that front, my response to you, Chair, is that we need to work together as a team. There have been cases where we've been pushing for MOUs with other agencies to work together to ensure that our consumers' rights are protected.
Ray, I think your name was mentioned there. You represent P&G Customs. You people are on the front line. What do you have to say?
Well, P&G Customs Service, our mission is to protect the border in our communities. Second is to facilitate legitimate trade across the border and collect revenue for the state. We have a role to play at the border, but we can only do it better if we have cooperation with other agencies. And may I say this, that we have signed MOU with the ICCC, and we will be relying on them to provide us information so that we can be able to profile the cargoes that comes through our security system at the borders. And that then only we can be able to say, okay, this cargo, it's supposed not to come in, and we have to stop it. That's how we go about doing it. Furthermore on that, we have an intellectual property right process that has been in place for some time. Intellectual Property Office that exists with IPA. This is one process that we encourage the right owners to come and register with us if there's counterfeits. So far from my recollection, there's about 3 companies only that have registered with us. So that simply means that if the particular import that comes in and the owner has have registered a restriction on our side, then that particular cargo don't move until we get clearance from the importer. And that's how it's done. So yes, we, from P&G Customs Service side, we have a process that exists in place to stop cargo that is to be harmful or it's not certified by the company that produces it in the country. Yes.
This is a good part for you now, David. I mean, you speak for some of our manufacturers. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, I suppose where I come from is the majority of consumers in PNG are fairly unaware of their rights and what they can do and what they can't do. And there's very few consumers here that will literally reject a product, particularly in the village areas or the outer areas. It's very much a means in the PNG of educating the consumers of their rights. I think as far as local manufacturers are concerned, because we're here to stay and we live here, we tend to keep within the laws and keep within what we have to do. But the imports, there is no real policing mechanism. Customs are on the border, so therefore the border is probably, in a country like ours, the best place to stop this. But all departments, the customs and all the other departments, are definitely under-resourced and don't really have the capabilities. And something that Victor can fill you in on with NICIT, NICIT sets the standards, but they're not the policing body. So there's a lot of other organisations that have to be involved, and that means all the organisations working together, which is quite hard. Victor, you might like to talk about where you stand.
Yeah. When you're talking about the activities of imports coming in, I think that is the current concern here, where customs takes a front line and stopping unsafe products or unwarranted products coming in, or contraband, for instance. I think the concern here is that customs is actually carrying this out by themselves. I think Ray Paul will agree with me. So there needs to be some network happening. I think a year or two back we were discussing about the Asikuda Plus, which is something where we needed to have access by all other stakeholders. And I think that would have been a good system to. You might want to, add on to say whether it is in use or not. But needs to have access to that as well, in order to also be part of that group that looks at products coming in or batches of containers coming in and what sort of products they are. And on the process where we have ICCC who looks at the the banned products because they're not safe. Those then can be information for us to actually look at the products and say, yeah, this is something we need to check, and we get an inspection team to actually go and check those containers and stuff, and actually see if is actually stuff that is not supposed to be coming into the country.
Okay. Well, is the National Department of Health responsible for policing that, or is it ICCC, Professor? But can I start with you?
We have appointed inspectors who go around the shops, especially the pharmaceutical premises, to inspect and even process the drugs with which we think the quality is fake, and we do analysis and ensure that those products are from certified manufacturers. And that is done every day, and we have the board which directs the inspectors to do all throughout PNG.
The ICCC Act only came into being in 2002 and began to be enforced in 2003. Prior to that, we had Consumer Affairs Council, and to me, its main responsibilities was to for price surveillance of the fuel prices that were announced monthly, and trade measurement, and that was about it. So if you really scan the horizon of all the legislations that we have, in those legislations, and Food and Sanitation Act is one of them, you will have certain provisions that have consumer have to do with consumer protection. In the Food and Sanitation Act, we have the date marking provisions and the labeling provisions. That's to do with foreign languages, labels being in foreign languages. So I think we have not really done that. And in the process of reviewing our act, we have started the process this year, thanks to support from EPSP, that we'd like to expand the umbrella, so to speak, because it's not only the ICCC Act that we administer. We also administer the Trade Packaging Act. The Packaging Act, the key requirement under the Packaging Act is that we must have the company's physical address on the label. And then there's the date marking and food labeling provisions that are under the Food and Sanitation Act, administered by the Health Department. We've been trying to have an MOU with the Health Department, but hopefully that will be realized soon. So the problem I have is that the commission can only do what it can. Hopefully, during the process of this act, we can take some of these powers back to us. In the interim, what we are asking some of these agencies, and Health Department is no exception, is to delegate those powers to us, so we can work with them and implement those, enforce those provisions. Right now, they are not being enforced.
Yeah, David, this is a good point for the Manufacturers Council to stand up.
Well, there's a couple of things I'd say there. First, we have all the packaging acts, we have all the laws, and PNG as a whole has adopted mainly Australian and New Zealand codes in all our standards. So we have them in place, we have them in law. We don't have the ability or the capability of policing them. The ICCC does the best they can. The consumer here is somewhat unable or unwilling to reject product. They have the final say because they buy. But most consumers here don't have that much choice. We need to address the packaging laws and use by dates and best before dates. That is the retailer's responsibility to take them off the shelves. But how to enforce that's a problem. There is another method which has been adopted many years ago, and I think Australia even had at one stage, was having registered agents for each commodity. At the moment, it's a bit carte blanche. Everyone can import everything. Maybe there's a means in the interim period while PNG develops that we have registered agents or companies that are allowed to bring in certain products. So we have a recourse to anything that's imported incorrectly. It also makes it easy for customs and people like that to say, well, they're not a registered agent to import drugs, therefore they can't bring them in. So this may be an interim measure to try and, as PNG grows and develops, to control some of these carte blanche imports we're getting, because there really is. Every Tom, Dick and Harry brings in everything, and that could be a problem. I don't know how the ICCC feels about this. It'd be interesting. Billy?
Well, before we go to Billy, we have a question from the audience. Zinedine, did I pronounce your name correctly? Zinedine, if you're here, and can we get a mic across so Zinedine can ask us the question? And please keep your question, if you're going to make a statement, keep it short and ask your question if you don't mind. We're pressed for time. Looks like we've hogged all the microphones up here.
While she's going to bring the mic to the person who's going to ask the question, I have a quick question for Dr. Manoka.
Absolutely.
What about the Anti-Dumping Act? I believe it's an act that has been around for some time, but I think it disappeared. I don't know whether it's revealed or not. Can you shed some light, please?
The Anti-Dumping Act was administered by the Trade Division. Now, the Trade Division, as you know, has been passed from one department to the other over the years. It's gone from commerce and industry to foreign affairs, now back to commerce and industry. That act was repealed a long time ago. And because we are signatory to the WTO, there was a decision made to shift that responsibility to the ICCC. Now, the decision to shift it, I think, was made 3 or 4 years ago. We are still waiting. We are open. We've agreed to accept that responsibility, that function. We are still waiting. Its significance came to the fore when we had issues with imported chicken coming in from Australia, where the poultry industry opposed. Now, the issue of dumping has nothing to do with health characteristics, scientific characteristics. Has nothing to do with quality. It's the only thing that relates to is pricing. Dumping means selling something here at below cost compared to the originating country. Now, it was my view that the poultry industry failed to establish that. They failed to establish that. Now, even if they had established that, we didn't have a process to deal with it because we don't have an act. So right now, we are not in a position to deal with anti-dumping issues because the legislation that we had, long gone. It's a legislation that we inherited from our colonial masters, like the Commercial Advertisement Protection of the Public Act. That's one of that deals with misleading advertising. That act also needs to be updated or subsumed into the consumer protection provisions in the ICCC Act. So there are a lot of acts that we administer here that are really out of date. But I agree with the Commissioner that we need to bring back the Anti-Dumping Act. Maybe it's something that we should look at in our review, that we should build into our act. But we are waiting. If the Foreign Affairs guys are listening and the Trade Division is listening, please, I want to know when the function will be moved to us with resources. Thank you.
Okay, we've got Zinedine, if you don't mind waiting. Ken, you wanted to add something?
I just want to add something on the drugs. I think last year we did a nationwide drug campaign. That's in collaboration with WHO, and that we want to do with fake drugs being sold on the street. And that's one thing that we need to do away, apart from being appointing officers to go around and do inspection, process the drugs, and also do analysis here locally. As a department, we have a dedicated authority for food inspections with town authorities. For example, here is a NCDC on looking at outdated food stuff and labels. And also our Food Sanitation Act specifies that the foreign labeled foodstuffs are not to be sold in PNG, and even the locally manufactured items as well. So that is all in the National Food Sanitation Act.
Good afternoon, panel. My question is to Mr. Ray Paul. What is the role of PNG Customs, who is the custodian of PNG government, who makes sure that junk items are not reaching our shores? What are some of the controlling mechanisms should PNG Customs have to minimize these junk items before we lose a lot of lives? Thank you.
We are there to process goods that come into the country. Our mission is firstly to protect, like you rightly said, protect the border, protect the community, facilitate trade. Unless a company comes and registers with customs and says that this product must not come in, then we will stop it at the border. As it is now, it's pretty much open. And anybody can import anything they wish to import. And one more thing that I will also highlight here is this, that we cannot stop every container that comes through the wharf. Just imagine what's going to happen. Can you imagine what's going to happen if we're going to stop every cargo and do 100% inspection on all the containers? That's not possible. It's not practical. Anywhere in the world, they don't do that. So like I said, if like Dr. Manako rightly said, we have to improve some of our legislation to cover areas where that will say that this particular good cannot come in. I'll just give an example. You know, there's a lot that appears on CNN about lead in paint. They put it on toys for children. It's very humble. To be honest with you now, it's very technical. Unless they give us the detail of that particular import, we can stop it at the border. And that advice can only come via ICCC or Department of Health. We've got MOU with the two departments, and we will act on their advice. Customs, we are implementing agency for the government. Yes, I hope I've answered your question well.
Dumping? Dumping does affect some of your members, and also to do with these harmful products. Obviously, you know, we might be talking two different standards here, one for people producing goods overseas and one for Papua New Guinean companies. What do you think?
There's two ways to look at it. There's no real testing facilities in PNG. So products that are imported across the border, there's really no way of checking on it. Say the Moxlin, which is a drug. If it says 250 grams on the pack and it's only got 100, who's going to know the difference? So there is no methodology here to test, or no resources, or very limited resources. So therefore, how do you control imports? Local manufacturing, yes, I think the majority of cases in PNG, the local manufacturers comply by the law. People like ourselves, we have HACCP, there's all food safety organisations in, we have people checking. And a lot of the companies here are sort of controlled by larger international corporations, which also make sure they meet standards. So in the majority of cases, PNG manufacturers, I think, comply. Most people comply to the packaging laws because they exist, and we have to, and we're here to stay. We've got nowhere to run. So, but if you're a foreigner and you're importing, if you've really got a feel for PNG, or you're just here to make money. And that's something people got to look at. So I don't know how you control the imports other than having registered importers. What was the other question you were after? The
anti-dumping.
Yeah, we definitely need an anti-dumping act because PNG is very open to that. The initial dumping act within the PNG legislation was quite good because it said that no product could be landed into PNG at a lower price than the domestic retail price, which really meant it was quite protective for PNG industry. We'd love to see that back. To this day, I don't know why it disappeared from the Act, and it was only disappeared about 10 years ago. It just disappeared from the system. But we'd definitely love to see the Anti-Dumping Act back.
Victor, thank you very much. A lot of homes end up with some of these harmful products we just heard from our panel. Does your organization have anything to do to help the consumer out there?
Yes, thank you for the question. On the ground, we rely on the inspections of these bodies that you've seen now. But NISIT has a bigger role to play as a standards body. It's part of the world's the global standard conformance community. So it plays a lot of government-to-government relationships in terms of making sure that the standards that we have are aligned to other economy standards, and of course theirs as well to us. In this community, a lot of discussions take place in terms of negotiations on what sort of standards of equipment should come on particular items that come into the country. For example, mobile phones and stuff. So we discussed it in more global terms, and we say that yes, we want this thing. For instance, power pin plugs and all that stuff. We create, and then from there, we create a standard. Papua New Guinea then creates a standard and makes sure that the standard is used in this country that is aligned to the global standards and conformance system. And I think that's where we come in. So we help that. We're not a regulator, so NISIT is not a regulator. It does not play that role. Governments think that the standards and conformance bodies should be independent of regulatory, as well as independent of private sector as well. So we play a sort of like a middleman role in making sure that there is a balance in terms of the level playing field for both the regulators. Sometimes there's complaints from the customers saying that the regulators are mistreating them. We can come in as that middle player and discuss the matter. So that's the kind of thing we play here for standards for the country. The other thing is that when implementing standards, we also feel that products sold on the market or made by manufacturers need to be up to a particular standard. And therefore, the Institute has established conformity assessment schemes. These are internationally recognized conformity assessment schemes that guarantee the consumer that this product is safe, and the product will have a mark on it. Unfortunately, a lot of the manufacturers do not come in for that. So product certification is still very infant in this country. And I hope that within the next 5 to 10 years, manufacturers can come in and start getting their products certified. The reason why I say this is that this product certification process in our country is not a mandatory process. It's voluntary. So a lot of the people coming in to get product certification are the ones who want to market their products better, not trying to comply. So there's nothing to comply with. So that's basically how we help.
Well, Billy, you want to say something about that?
Yes. The Commission has product recall and product ban powers. You will have seen in the media recently that we've banned a couple of products. For me, I think having a local standards organization is important, but at the same time, there are standards that we can easily borrow and adopt from overseas, particularly in relation to kids' toys, infant baby formulas. Those we can easily adopt. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here, so to speak. Those are standards that we can easily borrow. So, because we have not been able to enforce the MOU that we have with NISIT, and we think, and I'm on a NISIT board, and I personally think that NISIT has a long way to go yet. So, while we realize that fact, the Commission needs to recognize its obligation towards consumers and not wait for organizations like NISIT to get their act together. So what we are doing is adopting standards that are already out there, particularly in relation to kids' toys, baby infant formula, bunk beds. Bunk bed standards, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. That's my opinion. We are working on bunk beds as well. And I'm afraid my colleagues did not bring some examples. I would have shown you some examples. One of the things I'd like to highlight to my fellow members on the panel is that there are some products that we have banned which are still reappearing on the market. We have just put out a media release on yo-yo balls, yo-yo-like balls, that we need to take a tougher stand. I think on our part, the remedy is to we can take these traders to the court. We can take legal action. So when it comes to standards, we import well over 70% of the goods that come into the country, goods that we consume, over 70%. So it is my view that we can easily adopt standards from abroad. Of course, there are standards that we can also create here, but if need be. Thank you.
Well, that leads me to my next question, and I think Ray, you might want to answer this. David, you can also come in. We've spoken a lot about the problems. What about enforcement? Who actually does the enforcement? We can hear about all of these problems that our consumers are facing, but what about enforcement? Who does that?
Thank you. Like what Dr. Manoka rightly said, as soon as we see a particular import appearing on our profile that we're supposed to intervene with, we stop that at the border. And recently, we have done a number of awareness training to our staff as well as to the industry of what we need. So that function, for it to come through the border, yes, we have a role there to stop. Now, the other sad part also is this, that if it goes past us, past customs barrier, then we have cleared it. We can only monitor and watch out for the next import that will come. And then I think from there it needs another group now to at least to follow up and see, and that's where Dr. Manoka came in on his point about having interagency cooperation to at least check out on where the cargoes are, and we can always intervene. The other thing also that I'd like to highlight is this, that the consumers themselves, they have to come out clear. They have to come out and tell customs, or NISIT, we have this cargo continues to come. Because the problem we continue to face is this, that everybody that are importing, they don't declare the right commodity code on the product that they bring in. So when it hits the green lane, we think that, okay, it's all good. It goes through. That's what happens on our Secura Plus system. So, then, we would rely heavily on the consumer to come back and tell us. We cannot do everything. Our manpower is pretty much low, like David had said, but we will try to improve. But when we have a full manpower on strength, we will still continue to face problem. Thank you.
Out there. Customs needs your help. ICCC needs your help. You find the problem and you come and tell them, and then maybe they'll do something about it. But they need your help. We have a question from the audience now. Lester from Ocean.
It's good sitting here and listening to a lot of the issues, challenging issues that have been raised in regards to problems we face with goods imported, and then also problems relate to consumers. I have several occasions, and I'm sure every Papua New Guinea have experienced this, that when they go and buy some of the products in the shops, they bring them to use them, say, like tricycles, bicycles for their kids, hard-earned kina, spent on buying this, bring them home, and then only in a matter of days, those things fall apart, right? Now, what recourse do these consumers have? I mean, this is consumer rights. People spend their hard-earned kina, buy a product believing that it's good. Even the business communities and companies that allow, or even customs that allow them to be imported in the country, people have trust in them, spend their money, buy this product, and it breaks down, and they are unable to actually go, and there's no other place or avenue for them to raise their concern. That's one. Two, there are other consumer products that have a serious problem, that they are not necessarily like the bicycles or tricycles, but especially those that are real consumable, meaning eating and drinking, like food. We have chemical related problems, nutrition related problems that have long-term effects. How are any of those authorities and the panel are actually trying to deal with this? Because I've just been reading, and I've seen also on Australian TV that some of these products, like what do you call this, colored sweets and all that, those color chemicals have very long-term effect on their brain development of children and all that. I mean, this is an issue that is a generational issue. So what you panelists up there can do? Have you any idea insofar as things that have real serious problem insofar as the physiology or the well-being of the bodies are concerned? And three is all these products that eventually we find are not usable because they are useless, not good, and they eventually ending up in a dump. they become environmental problems. Are there any thoughts or ideas insofar as how we are going to handle this environmental disaster that's looming in our hands? Any ideas from the business community insofar as what could be done, or consumer affairs, or whoever that is in there? Because this has a lot of long-term environmental impact. And it would be really good to hear some realistic, concrete assurances or plans by way of legislation or policies for enforcement or addressing those problems that I've just highlighted, and many of our friends have highlighted this evening or this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That comes in. It's the standard practice throughout the world. So we will continue to face this problem. And the problem is also related to the products that we have banned. Because customs cannot check every container, they will continue to come in. So what we need to do for ICCC, first time we've taken a company to court. This is a last resort. I think from now onwards, and I've spoken to my advisors and my technical officers, that as a deterrent, we need to start to take cases to court to show the business community that we are here to enforce the law, that they are here to be responsible. While making money, they need to be more responsible. Lester, it's a very tough responsibility. We are a very small organization. We have 3 regional offices, one in Goroka, one in Ley, and one in Kokopo. The Goroka one scans the entire Highlands region with only 4 technical staff. Ley, 3 for the Momase region. Kokopo, 3. Compare these to more mature and developed economies. ACCC is represented in almost every major city in the country. In Queensland, I think Brisbane and maybe some other centers as well. Townsville, I know they have a presence there. Now, and like all other organizations, we have limited resources. We can go as far as we can. I think the big bang for the buck is to start to take people to court. We need to start to take people to court as a deterrent. There's an act called the Goods Act, and I'll probably get Howard to describe it a little bit more. But all I know under the Goods Act, and we do not know, to this day, we do not know which agency is supposed to implement the act. Now, under the Goods Act, consumers can only take private action under the Goods Act. And it's in relation to quality of goods. Now, Howard, can you add a bit more on the Goods Act?
We're bringing up the technical experts now to answer your questions.
Right, the Goods Act. The Goods Act, there's similar type of legislation through most common law countries throughout the world. The Goods Act and the PNG has been in operation for a long period of time. It essentially ensures that goods are of merchantable quality. In other words, the goods aren't shoddy. It provides for quite a few other things as well, such as the goods are reasonably fit for the purpose for which they're sold, and they correspond with the description. But the difficulty with the Goods Act and the PNG is that businesses can exempt themselves from the Act by contracting out of their requirement, of their obligations under the law. So that's a major deficiency of the law. In more developed countries, traders can't do that type of thing. They're bound by the statutory warranties and they have to stand behind their goods. But unfortunately, in PNG, that's not the case. And as part of the review of the Act, the Commission will certainly be looking at ways of ensuring that traders stand by their rights, and there's some form of redress to allow consumers to take action when their rights have been adversely affected along those lines. There's probably also a potential for some role for the Commission to take action on behalf of consumers. But that's not, again, covered by the current law. It's certainly one of the things we'll be considering under the amendments to the new law.
If I might just add, we are members of the International Consumer Protection and Enforcement Network, and a couple of meetings that we've attended, one of the things we've learned is that in those jurisdictions, the regulator assists the consumers so that the consumers are not burdened by taking private action. Because how many people in Papua New Guinea have money to take people to court, let alone a business organization? So in most jurisdictions that I'm aware of, it's the regulator that assists the consumer take the trader to court. So I'm afraid the Act as it is, we are really not in a position to address many of the consumer issues, one of which you have raised, which is under the Goods Act. That's the reason why we are undertaking the review of the Act. So maybe repeal those acts and bringing these provisions into the one act to deal with these issues. Now, I think Lester, your question also relates to standards. So I think I'll hand over to Victor, because if those goods don't meet certain standards, then they shouldn't be on the market in the first place.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I think the concern is there. When you're talking about standards, all the concerns in terms of an economy and how it relates itself to the environment it is in and all that stuff are included, or what do you say, incorporated into standards. But there are different standards available here. Just to clarify for the audience, the kind of standards we work with is kind of like standards to do with specifications, standards to do with guides on how something is done, or even standards to do with management systems and stuff like that. Okay, the kinds of standards we're talking about, which is products standards. These product standards are something we can pick up. NISIT can pick up anywhere in the world. All right, so it does not mean we can't get a product standard from Taiwan. We can. The product has to be identified here in this country first. What's the problem with it? And if it is a counterfeit product coming in and an investigation takes place, NISIT would like to know. And NISIT will investigate as far as where the country is and even extract the standard from that country and verify on the claims that have been made in this country. So as far as I'm concerned, in the last 15 years of the NISIT's existence, nothing like that has happened. All right? So we rely heavily on the consumer or the ICCC to be able to point out those things and let us know the problems in terms of the product standards that are coming from other countries. All right? NISIT here in Papua New Guinea will only shelf product standards that have been made in this country. And it'll make them available to other countries. Same with other countries, they do that for us. So for NISIT, we can pick up any product standard, as long as you say that, I want the product standard to do with the building of a wooden bed. We'll pick it up in no time. If you want the Taiwan standard, we'll get it from Taiwan. If you want a, English standard, or a British standard, we'll get a British standard. So product standards are made when the products are actually designed and made and accepted to be in commercial environment, and that's basically what it is. So we stand available to provide that information to all the regulators on whatever concerns they have in terms of the inspections. I think another thing I want to raise here is the anti-dumping. The NISIT is also concerned with anti-dumping, but let me explain to you what anti-dumping is. Anti-dumping is a country's product coming into our country where that company in that country has actually spent 5 kina on that product, making it at the end of the product, and it's selling it in our country for 2 kina. That's anti-dumping. But if a company in Australia, for instance, is supplying us with chicken, and the chicken has been sold at 1 kilo more than the price they make it, that's not anti-dumping. So that's the difference here we have to see. All right, so I think those are my two concerns there. I would like to raise a question to, if I can. I think from where we are in NISIT and watching all the inspection activities go on, we think that inspection activities are actually not happening at full speed. All right, I can see that a lot of the regulators, for instance, like ICCC and everything like that, may need to be upskilled in terms of the inspection activities. I think customs do as well. So you have ICCC, inspection services. They have probably about 20 inspectors. You have health department that has the inspectors. You have NICTA that has the inspectors. PNG Power that has the inspectors. NACIA, they have the inspectors. All these inspectors need to be grouped into one area, and audits, audit skills, knowledge-based, trainings need to be done for them to bring them up to a certain level. What NISIT will do for those kind of inspectors is, if possible, get them certified to an international standard. And I'm offering this international standard, is 17020. This one here can be something where we can keep making sure that the inspectors are actually up to speed with their inspection activities. I know that we don't have the numbers out there, but sometimes the ability of an inspector or an auditor is also something that makes it more better for inspection activities to take place. Thank you.
So you're talking about multi-skilling inspectors and having more inspectors with more skills. Ray, what do you think?
I think that's a good idea. I would like to agree. We have to at least share knowledge, and that's where the interagency comes in. And with the MOU that we've signed and all that, we have to go further than that and provide training for inspectors. Like for the customs side of business, we go by the profiling. I continue to refer back to profiling because that's the only way we can hold cargoes at the border. And we go specifically to what we want only. That's all. And if we find that there's some issues with the cargo, then we call in the importer and tell him, you did not declare this, what happened, and we charge them. That's all. But when it goes to the other areas that we need to be upskilled on understanding the different types of import, yes. And while on that, on the issue that the other friend at the back raised, I think my thinking is this, that I think we should have a testing center for any company wish to import into this country, probably by NISIT, your side. Anybody who wants to import anything at all, from a toy up to a Caterpillar machine, they have to come and get some kind of standard clearance from you first before they can import. I think that if we go down that path, then we can be rest assured that the goods that are coming in are declared well first, and they're the right good that can benefit our consumer. Thank you.
Good one. Ken, in health, obviously you have a lot of inspectors in every province, I would presume, and also with some of the issues with quality, sharing inspectors, as Victor has just spoken about, and also Ray. You want to add something?
I think I have to add on. Firstly, we have inspectors in all towns, and we want public to complain if the products that you are not satisfied, especially food stuff. We want you to complain so that we can do the inspection on whether the labels or the quality of the food. We also, in line with customs, we inspect the ship, and also at the containers we do, but sometimes the label of the package is wrong and something wrong inside, so it gets out of hand. And when on sale, that is where we have to identify, so that when you identify a certain foodstuff, whether it's outdated or is being labeled in foreign language, or the quality of the food is not as we should, then we want you to complain to the nearest office. The other thing is we have the Central Public Health Lab in Port Moresby, and that's where we do food analysis. And we want you to, if you do so, then we will collect a sample of food analysis and analyze the food product. To avoid this, we are organizing a national conference in Leh next month. This month now it started. And we're inviting all government agencies, manufacturers, importers, and their agencies to come together so we can work on the food safety. And that is basically we want to see what role each agency will play. And I'm making the announcement now. So the invitation letters will come to the government agencies, private and private sector.
Firstly, my name is Jolson Anere from National Planning. My question is, the price of fuel seems to be going up all the time. Which organization is responsible for this, and what are they doing about it?
Price of fuel is determined on the world market. What the Commission does is set the margins within which retailers are supposed to trade. They cannot sell the kerosene, diesel, petrol, and F-gas above the maximum. They can compete within the margin. So the first answer to your question is, your question is wrong. Fuel price has fluctuated. It has not gone up all the time. It fluctuates. Right now, previous 2 months maybe has gone up, and it will come down. Okay? And I'm not going to mention names here, and I know the Customs Commissioner has some views on this. We've had an agreement with a certain company, and I'm not going to name names here, that restricts retailers from importing directly, but buys from this company alone. So my personal view, I'm removing my ICCC hat, my personal view is that it is my view that fuel prices would be lower than what they should be.
From my quick check on the price of goods, I've established that it costs about less than 1 kina to produce a liter. I can just only say that. So if we have a legislation that can bypass any contract or agreement that is in place, it's the best way to go for now. Because we are rich, yet so poor. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Okay, so, this is a serious consumer issue now. What can we do about it? What can anybody do about it?
It's like you marry somebody and you front up with the pasta, and pasta is the government. And then you exchange rings, and, it's for life, huh? I think we are stuck for life, and I know it's a 30-year agreement, but surely something has to give for the sake of this country, because the cost of doing business in this country is astronomical. It's not only fuel. We are dealing with SOEs. We regulate certain SOEs. We feel that power rates are too high, water rates are too high. Cost of doing business, it needs to come down. If we're talking about productivity, the cost of doing business needs to come down. It is my view that SOEs can become efficient. Now, I have my own remedies, but that as an individual, as an economist, removing my ICCC hat. But, we've signed a contract, and we've got to live by the contract. Unless something happens, I don't know how the future looks in terms of fuel prices.
The favorite subject of all business people in Papua New Guinea. Now, Billy asked about a divorce. Married people can get divorced, but with the fuel, we can't seem to do anything. What are your thoughts?
Really, it's very expensive doing business in Papua New Guinea. We're not a low-cost producer. All the utility costs are high, service costs are high, infrastructure is poor. It really is not a good place. And unfortunately, manufacturers only want a level playing field to exist here. And really, if the duty rates keep dropping and the level playing field gets so tilted against local manufacturing, most of us won't survive. And there's a social recourse to this, because with urban drift, all the major cities are here surrounded by large numbers of unemployed people. And the only solution to them is work. I believe, in its personal view, that PNG's biggest asset is probably their labour force. Firstly, it's reasonably educated, it's fairly strong, most of them speak English, and they're at a reasonable price. So really, a white goods manufacturer in Asia could put manufacturing here and it'd be very successful. But how do you encourage someone to come to PNG? There is really no benefits. So until the government realises that and addresses some of the issues in regard to operating here, it's not going to happen, which is a real shame for the country and to the security of the people who live here.
Now the manufacturer's representative said that dropping kina raises costs. I think that is contrary to normal economic analysis. If the kina drops, you become more competitive with imports, not less, because imports become more expensive. That's the first point. The other points in your earlier comments, you mentioned that imports should be controlled and importers or import agents should be registered and so on. To the extent your comments go beyond safety considerations, are you concerned about something else like parallel imports?
Firstly, I didn't mention the kina, but the kina fall affects both us and imports. I talked about the utilities and services and costs of doing business here. Why I was talking about registered agencies is that there is no recourse. If you had a problem with drugs or with any product, if there were certain registered importers, then you have a source to go to. Now it's carte blanche. So if all, I hate to say, if all drugs had to go through, say, 5 different organisations or 6, at least they have a recourse to go back and check on them. Now every person can bring it in. There is no controls. The unfortunate part with parallel imports, because I'm affected by them as well, is the majority of people who are parallel importing are under invoicing as well. So they're breaking the law.
Have you considered the implications of that as a non-tariff barrier to entry and competition?
At least our citizens are happy with what is on the shelf. And, while our market is pretty much open for anybody to do business, it's their own right, prerogative to import at any level. It's not about to do with tariff, no. But it's just the safety of the product when it's imported.
I think for products to come into this country, the way it is done is the exporting country needs to be the one doing the test and certifying the product, then declaring it to us. So what NISIT does is just to verify the product. The reference lab that needs to be set up for the exports. So whatever exports have been made, they'll be tested before they can go out. I think there are some labs which are doing organic testing, which is to do with rubber and stuff like that. They do the test. Those labs need to be accredited to NISIT. So the accreditation is the legal system that is making sure that the test facility is providing some test at some level. So that's just to help out.
Is anyone allowed in PNG to sell drugs? Is there any control? Because I think anyone can import. So is there any controls for who sells or who doesn't sell?
We understand with the customs, and we do inspections at the arrival of the goods. Even we do the containers. And as I have said, if only the package has been labeled wrongly, containing different stuff, then that's where we miss. Otherwise, we open the box.
You can answer that?
Drugs, medicines are restricted import, meaning if they come through, it will appear on the red line, meaning they have to provide the authority to import. So while it's open to import anything, there are some goods, the items, that are restricted. Some are prohibited. So when it comes through the barrier at the border, we intervene with them. So that's the answer to that. Thank you.
I wanted to know, out of your surveys with WHO on counterfeit medicines, what was the most likely medicine to be counterfeited? And my second question was, when you do find a medicine that's counterfeited, what does the NDOH do? Do you go back to the country of source? Do you report it to Pharma or Interpol? What's the procedures? Thank you.
We have the pharmaceutical board, which approves the certified drugs manufacturers around the world. And we even go through that country to see that it's been accredited to get the drugs. And when they arrive here, as I've said, we have inspectors that they go around inspect, as well as they collect samples and do analysis. But if anything, apart from that, we want you to make a complaint or bring the sample so we can see. And then we have to prosecute that company who is selling the product.
Billy, you want to add?
I don't think the audience will be happy with this, but under the ICCC Act, we don't have any remedies insofar as counterfeit goods are concerned, and that includes drugs. And that's one of the reasons why we are doing our review. Going back to the early 2000s, the Act, as I recall, was rushed to create the ICCC Act. And so on the consumer protection provisions, there's a lot to add to strengthen the Act. So right now, when it comes to counterfeit goods, we don't have any remedies to deal with those goods. I think my understanding of counterfeit goods are goods that are not made by the same manufacturer, but by a different manufacturer, but using the same label. That is my definition of counterfeit good. I don't want to associate counterfeit goods with quality. I think that's the best definition I can give. Coke coming in from Indonesia or Malaysia, that's not counterfeit good. Coca-Cola. Because they're using the same, recipe. Okay, same recipe. Whether Coke is produced in France, wherever, they use the same recipe. Unfortunately, Coke in Asia is much cheaper because cost of doing business in those countries is much, much lower, particularly labor. So when they enter this country, traders have come and complained to us. For us, parallel import is not illegal. It provides competition to locally produced goods. And it's good for consumers. Consumers have a choice. They can either buy the cheaper Coca-Cola or the locally produced one, which is slightly expensive. So I'd like you to have the distinction in your mind. That for me, I don't think counterfeit goods can be associated with quality.
My question is to Dr. Billy Manoka. Sometimes you go to buy something, but it is a bundled product, and you don't want to buy the other product. What can be done about this? Also, some of the products are complex, and the literature explaining them is confusing, so the consumers don't really know what they're buying. Thank you.
Those of you from more developed and mature countries will associate with the concept of bundling. How many of you from Australia, how many of you have a Telstra telephone and internet package? How many? That's an example of a bundled. Yep. So maybe you're after only the internet, but then you are forced to also have the landline because it's all bundled. And it's because if you put it together, it's much, much cheaper. Okay? At the ICCC, we are having discussions with the Bank of Papua New Guinea about this in relation to financial transactions. With the example that I've just given, I don't think we are there yet in terms of the telecom but I think telecom is slowly getting there. You will see ads in the paper, them bundling, there's bundling going on. I think consumers should be given a choice. If they just want the internet, then they should be given the internet, not to be forced to have landline and other things, or even dongles. Consumers should have a choice. Now, on the bundling question, in relation to the medical profession, I have a big, big concern with medical practitioners. In my view, they should not be prescribing drugs. All they should be doing is diagnosing patients. Patients should be going to pharmacies and buying their drugs. Now, in Papua New Guinea, patients who go to see private doctors, they are forced to purchase drugs in the same facility. Now, if you compare the drugs that they purchase there compared to the pharmacies outside, huge difference. It's one area that the Department of Health and the Medical Association and other regulators need to address. That, to me, is a case of bundling. Consumers are not given a choice. They should be given a choice to either accept the drugs provided by the medical practitioner or purchase outside. Sometimes you will find that the bundled product is a very good deal. Because if you take them separately, you end up paying more. You really end up paying more. So really, some bundled products are good, some are not. You have to use your best judgment. Now, if you think you have been forced into something that you do not want, then you should bring your complaint to the commission, and we can try to assist you. Decision. Right now, even me as commissioner, I go to see my doctor, and I like the doctor. We are good friends. While I don't like what they're doing, it breaks my heart because they are doing the same to the other Papua New Guineans. And it's something that I was hoping that Professor Sapuri would be here. It's something that I did discuss with Professor Sapuri when he was the president of the Medical Association, that something needs to be done. He did agree with me. I know he will see me on camera saying this, but we did have some private discussion. Something needs to happen, because those of you living in Australia, when you see a doctor, you get your prescription and you go to a pharmacy. Now, you can choose where to go. You know where the cheapest drugs are. We don't have that choice here. And for me, it's a democratic right of the consumer to make the decision. It's not for the doctor to impose or the facility to impose the decision on the consumer. So my view is there's nothing wrong for the consumer or the patient to request the doctor, look, doctor, give me the prescription. I'd like to buy my drug outside.
Thank you, Professor. I think, if you're a doctor out there and you're watching this show, give our consumers a fair go and let them go down to the chemist. We pay you enough in your consulting fees and all the other fees. We have a question from Kathleen. Do we have Kathleen? Yep, right at the back.
Thank you. Dr. Manoka mentioned this partially, the economic impact that counterfeit goods that are imported would have on the country. My question is directed to David Pitt. We have a lot of Asian products that get into the country and they're cheap and affordable to consumers. What are the negative impacts and what would be the positive impacts in terms of the economy?
One thing you can sort of assure with products made in PNG, though there's a limited range, is that it will meet standards. We have to meet the standards of NIST. Food standards we have to do. Organisations such as the one we run have HACCP and also food safety codes. So therefore, we will meet them. Also, you have a recourse, because anyone who manufactures within this country is easy to contact and has a recourse, because people go back to them and complain, they have to address the issue. I'm not sure, but probably the Goods Act would apply to local manufacturers because they are here and there is a place. So I think if you buy locally, you are assured of getting a quality, maybe not the range that you get from imported product, but you should get an acceptable quality that you always get. And also you are helping the country to create employment, and also there's also more tax created from local manufacturers and their employees. So there is a few benefits to buying locally. So we love your support, but the ranging is only the issue. But as PNG grows and more manufacturers come here, the range will increase.
I kind of blame the consumer ourselves. When we see a product that is cheap, we just go on to buy them. Instead of asking the second question, is it health? Is it okay with health? The preparation of the food or whatever that is imported. All these type of questions we don't normally ask ourselves. And today we had a secret tobacco workshop that is to address the illicit trade of tobacco coming through our border, which is a health concern already. Though the government, we want to collect as much revenue from tobacco, but how it's manufactured abroad, we don't know. And the impact on health could be huge. So, it comes back to the consumer, like Dr. Manoka has said. Thank you.
We really do need to tell the consumer what their rights are. The other disappointing thing is, if in the major centres like Port Moresby or Lae, the products are probably a lot better controlled. You find products that have been banned or not allowed in the country from organisations suddenly end up in the outreaching areas, the smaller towns, and they get dumped on the people where they have no choice. I'm not sure, and Professor may be able to answer, but when goods are confiscated, I believe they should be totally confiscated and destroyed. I don't know whether that happens, because if they just tell them to take them off the market, they just get moved to other locations. Billy, could you answer that?
I think, for me personally, I think we have them removed, but I think we direct our traders to have them removed. But beyond that, we have no further role to play, and maybe it's an area that we should look at in terms of reviewing our act, and also look at the best practices that have been adopted by consumer protection agencies around the world. I think in the interim, my view is that maybe we should also focus on deterrence, and maybe we should start to take traders to court and publicize that and use that as a deterrence. Right now, we've drafted a compliance program. The compliance program is accompanied with a summary of the ICCC Act and other related acts that we administer to educate consumers and traders to behave responsibly and consumers to be more responsible in terms of bringing their complaints to us and asking questions about the product before purchasing, knowing their rights. So as we speak, we will be circulating the compliance program for comments to the general public, and I'd like the public to be part of the process. And so hopefully we can strengthen our consumer protection aspects of the Act and do a better job on protecting our consumer interests. But in closing, I'd like to emphasize a couple of things. Firstly, that we are doing our part and by strengthening our role in the consumer protection sphere by reviewing the Act. Hopefully by 2015 we will have an Act that is more modern and up-to-date. And because when I say modern and up-to-date, I haven't mentioned cross-border trade. Increasingly, Papua New Guineans are buying on the internet using credit card. All kinds of products, tourism products, iPads, you name it. Already, we have attended a couple of ISPEN meetings. Cross-border issues is a major issue. And we are not there yet. So one of the areas that we are looking at is, in reviewing the Act, we will be forward-looking. We will have an Act that is more like the ones that are more, a lot of jurisdictions are both developing and developed. So hopefully we can tackle issues raised by Lester. Right now, the Commission is not that effective because the law is very weak, very weak. We don't have remedies for counterfeit goods. So with that, hopefully going forward that we can do a better job as we are part of the consumer protection family throughout the world.
From fake goods and shoddy products to dangerous toys, what can be done to stop Papua New Guinea becoming a dumping ground? I'd like you to join me in thanking our panel members. We have from the ICCC, of course, Professor Manoka. Thank you so much, Professor. Please also join me in thanking Commissioner Ray Paul. Thank you, Ray. Victor Gabi from NISIT. Thank you very much. David Pete from the Manufacturers Council, Paradise Foods. And Ken Nea Kawapa from the National Department of Health. For all the consumers out there, you've seen the faces of the people you can bring your complaints to. So we hope you've enjoyed this program, and the next time you see a shoddy product, you know where to go. Thank you and good night.
Welcome to the house that my father built. Welcome to the house that my brother built. Yeah, welcome to the house that my people built. Yeah, welcome to the house. Be a part of the family.